Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and welcome to the latest of my tutorials on how to install the MySQL software tools on macOS. I'm recording this in January 2018, and this is primarily for the use of the students in my database courses. This tutorial is on YouTube, and so if you're not part of my course and you're finding your way here, you're certainly welcome to follow along. But I just want to warn you ahead of time that I've really tailored it specifically to the needs of the people in my courses. Today, I'm going to be installing the latest version of all the software on the latest version of macOS. So let's look at the version of macOS that I have here. I'm actually working on a virtual machine. I do that so we're doing a clean install. And let's take a look. So about this Mac, we're on macOS High Sierra version 10.13.2. And earlier in the week, that was the most up-to-date version that we had, and it probably still is today. So before you install the software on your machine, I think you really ought to update the operating system all the way to the most recent version that's available on the day that you do the install. Okay? Likewise, with the MySQL software and the rest of the things that we're going to install, today I'm going to install the most recent version that I can find. And when you go to do your install, of course, if you're in my class that's about to begin next week, you'll probably be installing the same version I will. But if you're playing this tutorial for the summer semester or for the fall semester, it's entirely possible that you'll find newer versions of one particular thing or all these things. And my recommendation is you always go with the newest version. Now, occasionally, newest versions are broken. Okay? If that happens, I typically put out a warning to my students and identify a particular version to be installed for a particular operating system. But that's not the case today. Right now, the current version, everything works fine with a workaround or two. And that's okay. All right? That's just fine. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to open up Safari. And we're going to go to the website to download the MySQL software. And we're using the Community Edition version of the software. That's the free version. So let's go to, I think the URL is dev.mysql.com. Okay, and we want to go to downloads. So that brings me to dev.mysql.com/downloads. All right, that's where we want to be. And let's look at what we're looking. So we're not looking for Enterprise Edition. That's the pay version. We are looking for Community Edition, which is the free version. So let's click on that. That's down at the bottom of the page. And here are the things that we're going to install. MySQL Community Server. Okay, that's the server portion of this client-server setup. MySQL Utilities. And MySQL Workbench, which is the client side of this client-server workup. And if we install these three, things should work pretty well. So let's start downloading and installing. Okay. So let's start with MySQL Community Server. I'm going to click on that. And if I go down the page, I should find the download I'm looking for. The site is pretty good at being able to tell what kind of operating system you're on. So it's going to give us a macOS version. We're right now today, the latest version available for the community server is 5.7.20. That's the one we want. And the easiest file format to install is a DMG archive. That's a typical macOS install file. So we're going to download that. So we're just going to click on download and let that get started. And what I'm going to do in the meantime is I'm going to pause until the download is already there. And I'll be back when my download's done. So I'm back early because I wasn't really downloading. Of course, it asks you if you want to download, and you say you want to, and it gives you more choices. And what we had actually come to was this page, which gives you the opportunity to log into your Oracle web account or to sign up for one. I've had one for years, and I think it's a good thing to have. So if you don't have one, great to sign up for one. But if you don't want to go through that process, you can just go to the link right underneath. No thanks, start my download. Just start my download. And of course, that's what I want to do. So I'm going to click on that. And then here's my download. So I actually am going to pause a minute for the actual download. And I'll be back soon. And good news, the download is now finally done. So I'm going to come over and I'm going to go down and in the dock I'm going to click on the downloads area. And that fans out as usual. I'm going to click on the .gmg file. And that should fire up the download. So it's doing some work now. And there it is, all there for us to click on. This is the installer package. So I'm going to double click on the installer package. And we start to go through the install sequence. So I'm going to begin by clicking the continue button. And then it wants me to agree to the license, so I click on continue. Then it gives me an agree button. Click on that. And now I'm not going to change location. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to click on install. Install button in the lower right. It's going to want to know the password for your operating system. This is no database password. This is the password for your macOS. So I put mine in and continued, and here we're actually seeing the install going on. And at least on my machine, which is pretty fast, even when I'm in a virtual machine, it works pretty fast. Okay, so MySQL servers, as typical database servers, have a password. And what it's told us here is, it did the install and it created a temporary password. Probably a pretty good password for security, but a crummy one for remembering. So I'm just going to highlight this password. I'm going to right click and copy. And then now I'm going to take it and I'm going to save it in a text file. So I'm going to go to the launcher and click on that. And here's where you see my virtual machine runs kind of slow when it's doing some other graphic things. Then I'm going to go to Other, which is going to bring up a list of kind of accessory applications. And in there should be a text edit. And again, this is a little slow because of my virtual machine setup. So I'm going to double click on text edit, open that up. And that's acting a little clunky right now too. Apologize for that. We just double click on it again. No, I think we're okay. Yep, we are okay. If we look down here in the dock, we'll see the text edit is up. And we're going to click on that in order to expand it. It's not opening. Oh, I think it is open. I'm going to clear the I don't really want to clear the thing that has the password on it. That would be bad. Oh, here's the text edit window right there. So I want to say, yes, I want a new document. And now I'm going to right click and paste in that temporary password. So I'm going to minimize that. Let's do that. Okay, so that's down in our dock. I'm going to clear the dialog that had the temporary password on it now that I know that I have it. And it says, oh, our installation was successful. So very good. So we can close our installation there. Do I want to move the installer to the trash? Yeah, I probably do. It takes up a lot of disk space. I would think it was maybe 300 megabytes or something like that. So I'm going to trash it. And there we are. So here on the Mac, it turns out that primarily the best way to work with the server is to do so out in the operating system. That's the way we start and stop the server. Okay? So let's see how we're going to do that. Well, we go to the upper left of our screen and we click on that dark apple icon. Excuse me. And we go to System Preferences. And all the way down at the bottom is an icon for MySQL. So this is how we control the server. So I'm going to double click this, and it's going to open up the dialog. Now, notice down here along the bottom is a checkbox that says automatically start MySQL server on startup. That means on startup of the operating system. Well, oddly enough, ours is not started yet. Well, why? Well, if you really think about it, we just installed it. So when we started up our operating system, it wasn't here. So as long as we leave this checked, typically when we fire up our a computer, it's going to start the MySQL server just fine, and we won't have to fool with this. When would we have to fool with this? Well, there may be times when you're working when your server gets misbehaving and you want to stop and start it. Well, this is the place to come. Okay? So it's currently stopped. I'm going to click on the button for start. And it's going to ask me for the password. And so let's look. System Preference wants to make changes. I believe this is the password for my operating system. So let's put that in. Okay, I put that in. And now it's running. Pretty good. Okay, so we still haven't used the password for the server yet. Okay, well, let's try stopping the server. Click on Stop My Server, and now it's stopped. Okay, that's good. So let's start it again. As long as we're here, we're going to want to use it in a couple of minutes. And it started pretty quickly. So as long as you have the checkbox at the bottom checked, automatically start MySQL Server on startup, you shouldn't have to come here unless it's an unusual situation. Okay. All right, good. So let's download and install some more stuff. Okay, so let's see where we are. Let's just click on downloads again. And if you remember, we had to go to the bottom, Community Edition. Okay, so we're going to go to that. So we did the first one that we wanted, Community Server. That's downloaded and installed. The utilities, these are a bunch of programs that allow us to do things like backup our server, things like that. These are capabilities that we're not going to use directly, but it turns out the MySQL Workbench that we're going to download in a couple of minutes, it uses a lot of the utilities. And this gives us the newest version that goes with our version of the server. So if you skip this, download and uninstall for the utilities, you may get into Workbench and find out that it's warning you all the time that you've got the wrong version of the utilities. So coming back here and downloading these is the way to solve that problem. So let's do it the right way from the beginning. We're going to download MySQL Utilities. And here we've only got one choice. It's a DMG archive, so I'm going to click on download. And again, it's not really going to go to download, as we usually see. It takes us to an opportunity to sign up for an account, but you should already have one by now. So just take the link, no thanks, just start my download. And this one should be pretty fast. So we're not even going to have to wait for this one because it's not that big. So I'm going to go down to my dock and click on that. And there it is, MySQL Utility. So I'm going to click on that file. And it runs a bit and gives us the utilities package. So if I double click on this, with this particular application, I get a complaint that it's from an unidentified developer. So how do I solve that? Well, here's how I solve that. I think this works with the option button. So we have the control button, the option button, and the command button. I think we go over, we hold down the option button and we right click and we say open. And now it gives us the same complaining dialog, but instead of just being able to cancel, there is an open button. So this allows us, this is how you tell it, yeah, it may be from an unidentified developer, but we do want to open it. So that's how I got this to open. Okay, so this is the install dialog for the MySQL utilities. So let's begin by clicking on the continue button. And we get the license, click on the continue button. And it doesn't seem to want to listen to me, so here I'm clicking twice on some of these things. Yeah, now comes the dialog where I'm able to agree. And now it gives us the opportunity to install. And I'm not going to change install location. I'm not going to change anything. I'm just going to click on install. And again, it asks for the password, and this is the operating system password again. It's not the database password. So put that in. And it's going to do some install stuff, and it says it's done. And I'm going to move that installer to the trash. Now we could go over and look for those utilities in the list of applications that we have, but we don't really intend to use them directly, so I'm not even going to look for them. I just wanted to download them so that the next thing that we download, MySQL Workbench, will have a fresh and proper copy of the utilities, which it uses kind of under the covers. Okay, let's go back to downloads again and get Workbench. Workbench is the client part of the client-server pair, and it's the program that we're going to be working in most frequently in our class. So let's go back to downloads, click on that, go down to the bottom, click on the link for MySQL Community Edition. That's the free version. And we want to come down and find MySQL Workbench. And there's a link down here for download. So I'm going to click on that. And again, we go to the page to find the download. And again, I'm not given too many options. There's just one file version here. It's a 64-bit DMG. It's just what I want. So I'm going to click on the download button. And again, it doesn't really download. It brings you to a page where you can sign up for an account and then download. Well, I already have an account. You do by now too. Let's go to the link, no thanks, just start my download. And this one is going to take a little while. So while that's going on, I am going to pause. And the download has now finished. So let's go down and fan out the downloads area here. And it says we've downloaded MySQL Workbench, the community 6.3.10. And that's the most recent version. That's good. So why don't we click on the icon for the DMG file. And this one just installs pretty peacefully. So we're waiting for some file copying and verifying and such. Okay, so this is kind of a typical macOS installer where we got something that represents the application, and it wants us to pull it into the applications directory. So here we're going to left click on this dolphin icon. The dolphin icon is the MySQL icon, and this is the icon for MySQL Workbench. So we're going to left click and drag this over on top of the applications folder and drop it. And what it really does is it really does copy what we're looking for, in this case, MySQL Workbench. This is for the first time I paid attention to the fact that the logo is the dolphin for MySQL and a wrench for the Workbench. That's kind of nice. So that is in the applications folder now. So it's time to close the browser. We have all the pieces that we want for right now. We'll be back to download the textbook files in a minute. Okay, so let's go and double click on Workbench in our applications folder, and it's going to fire up the application after verifying it, which is very polite. And something that I'm going to do, okay, we say, yeah, we want to open it. So open it. But something that I'm going to do quite soon is I'm going to set it up to be kept in the dock. I don't want to go searching for this little icon in my applications folder all the time. So let's close applications folder. Okay. And let's, before we do anything else, let's go down to the dock, right click on the icon for Workbench, pick options, and say keep it in dock. Okay. And now, now that's going to be there whenever I want it. I'm going to say that this particular version of Workbench seems to behave quite well. One thing it doesn't seem to do well is to quit. Okay, so I have found, for instance, if I go up to the title bar and I click on the icon to close it, that it will actually close it. Okay. But then when I want to open it again, if I can go down to the dock, and if I left click on it, nothing happens. Oops. That's not good. And it's kind of stuck there. So what I've learned to do is when I want to close it, I use the quit function. So right now I'm going to quit it by right-clicking on the icon in the toolbar and saying quit. And the little dot underneath it will disappear. So when we start it up, so you can see it started again. Okay. So it's all started. That's nice. Okay. And again, when you want to quit it, I'm going to recommend that instead of going to the little red dot, you go up to the menu and you click on MySQL Workbench, or you could go down to the dock and choose quit. And this seems to cleanly quit it, whereas the little red candy piece doesn't seem to be wired up as well as it should be. Okay? Very good. All right. Now the next thing that we want to do is we want to be able to log onto the server and see what's there. So let's do that. So I'm going to fire up Workbench again. And let's just take a look at some of the capabilities of Workbench. Chapter 2 of the Mrock book is covers the capabilities of Workbench. So we're not going to cover all of them right now, but we're going to cover sort of enough to get the job done today. You will see that there is a navigation panel down the left side, and there are three choices. We're in the top one. Okay, so it says, welcome to MySQL Workbench, and you see these things down here called connections. A connection is what it connects Workbench, which is the client part of the application, to the server. Okay, so that's what we're going to use. But the other options here, there's a second option for the modeler or the diagrammer. We're going to use that in, I think, chapter 10, chapter 11. So we'll get there. Okay. And then the last option is for a migration wizard, which we don't have really any use for at all. Okay. And that main screen that we had when we had those choices is actually the home screen. It's actually what's associated with this little house symbol here. So if we go to the tabs and click on the house, we'll get back to the home screen. And everything else we open up is a tab. So that migration tab, we're not interested in. We're going to close that. And we're going to go back to the top option, which is where we make the connection. This is a connection that logs into our server. Our server that we installed is on our machine, which is called localhost, and it's listening on port 3306, which is the default port. So the instance of a MySQL server that we want is called here local instance 3306, and more technically it's called localhost 3306. And the user that we're going to be is the root user, which is the super user. We don't go through user permissions in this course, so we're always going to be the super user, and we're going to be the only user on our own machine, so that's going to serve us pretty well. So how do you connect? Well, you left click on that, and now it's going to ask us for a password. Well, remember our password that we kept in that text editor. Let's go find that. So I'm going to go down to the dock. I'm going to expand that, and I'm going to highlight it and right click and copy. And I'm going to go and I'm going to paste that in and say that's my password. Okay. Now, when you eventually get going, you are going to want to save the password in your keychain. Okay. What that's going to allow you to do is not have to remember your password. You're never going to remember this highly secure, nonsensical password. So we're going to change the password in just a minute. So hang on before you check any boxes like this. Okay, so here gives a chance to change the password. The old password is the one we just pasted. The new password, we're going to use just the one recommended in the textbook. And I haven't said yet that in our textbook, Marock's MySQL second edition, there's an appendix B which has the instructions for how to install these tools, and they're a little different than what I'm doing. The book's 3 years old. I originally started with the instructions from the textbook, but as I've gotten more experience, and as the products have changed, the actions that we take to do the install have kind of evolved. Okay, so you can certainly refer to that, and it's going to be very similar to what we're doing here. In that appendix, though, he makes a really good recommendation, which is to use a password that's unforgettable. And the one that he chooses is Sesame, S-E-S-A-M-E, as in open sesame. And he, as in a magic word, he has that in the text. So if you completely forget the password, which almost everybody does, you can go back and remind yourself of what you use. So I'm going to put it in S-E-S-A-M-E and put it in again. S-E-S-A-M-E. Okay. And I'm going to click OK. And so now it says, please enter the password for the following service. I think that's our password again, S-E-S-A-M-E. Let's do that again. Yeah. And now that's it. So every time you log on, you're going to have to put in your password until you also check that box that says remember the password. Now this is a pretty low integrity password. In terms of security, it's probably a very bad one. We're doing it because we're relying on the security of our PC to protect our server. We're just learning here. We don't have any confidential information. This is not a production server. The biggest risk that we have is we'll get locked out of our server because we forgot the password. Okay, in a production environment, that's not true. So we need a much more robust, high security password, but that's not going to be part of this course. Okay, so here we are. We're all ready to go. We are inside Workbench. And I just want to point out that we're going to go over some of the features. There's a navigation panel over to the left. There is a panel in the middle that's usually for the editor, for the file that you have open. And there's a kind of a helper panel all the way on the right. We're not going to really talk about that today. So let's go to the navigation panel and let's click on server status. And again, it wants our password. It'll keep asking for that until you click the box that says that you want to save it. I'm not going to do that. Okay, so we can see that it's running, which is good. We're able to see that out in the operating system, right? And we can see some things. We can see that it is on port 3306. We can see that it's called local instance 3306. That's what we tried to connect to, so that's good. We can also see that it's version 5.7.20. That's what we thought we installed. All that's good. The rest of this information is maybe interesting, but not what we're going to talk about today. Now, Workbench has some features for starting and stopping the server, but they haven't worked in recent versions on the Mac, and unfortunately that's the same with this version as it's been for a while. So if we go over to the navigation panel over here, we go under instance and we say, oh great, there's a startup and shutdown. So let's click on that. So it says, okay, the server instance is running, and you can get kind of excited. So, oh, I could stop and start the server right inside of Workbench, but unfortunately this is going to fail. So we're going to click on the button Stop Server, and it doesn't work. Okay, and you can click on it as many times as you want, and it won't work at all. So this feature is not something that we're going to be able to use on the Mac. It works on the Windows version just fine, at least in its current incarnation. But starting and stopping the server while you're working is not something you're going to have to do often. It's a fairly it's a fairly drastic thing to do to stop and restart the server. And if you remember right, we're able to control the server by going up to the menu bar for our Mac, clicking on the Apple icon, going to System Preferences, going all the way down to the MySQL, double-clicking on that, and then we have all that functionality there. So that functionality works great on the Mac, but the little panel to start up and shut down the server is not working, and it hasn't worked in a lot of versions. I don't know why. This is an open source project, so a lot of the people who work on it are volunteers, and either they don't know it's broken or they figure it's not high priority because we have that capability in the operating system. Okay, so you can try that, but it's not going to work. Okay, so what we're going to need to do now is we're going to need to install a database or two or three in order to see how this tool is going to work. But before we do that, we need to download the files from the textbook. Okay, so again, I'm ready to close up Workbench, and another workaround that we have is we want to go up and click on Workbench Quit. Okay. I want to tell you that you're able to minimize Workbench just fine and to maximize it again, but if you try to close it with the little red jewel, you're going to get yourself kind of stuck. Okay, and we're not going to need this text file anymore because we already got rid of that password, so it was only a temporary randomly generated password. Okay. All right, so we've got this. So we got to do some more downloading. Let's go back to Safari and do a little bit of navigating. I'm going to maximize that so we can see it well on our screen. And I happen to know from my textbook that we're going to go to murach.com, MURACH.com. That's the publisher for our textbook. And I want to warn you, if you have a narrow browser, you're not going to see this menu that we're going to use. So make your browser wide enough so that this menu doesn't disappear. And we're going to go to the menu Shop Books, and we're looking for a database programming book, so let's click on that. And the one that we want is Murach's MySQL, so let's click on that. And this is a pretty informative page, but it doesn't really score as high on usability as I would like it to. What we're looking for is the downloadable files. Okay, so let's pull down on the page. And there's a tabbed interface about halfway down. We're currently on About This Book. Let's go to Free Downloads. So there's a couple of chapters you can download. Not going to worry about them. And then we get down to the files from the book examples and exercises. And so what are we going to do with that? Well, we don't want the Windows file. That's an executable that will install them, but it won't run on our Mac. So what we want is the second one, the zip file for any system. Now, I'd like to tell you that you can click on the Download Now button, and it's actually going to download. But the fact is that very few things actually work that way now. So when we click on this, Download Now, what do we get? Well, we get the opportunity to sign up for another mailing list. Well, that's okay with me because these are good guys. These Murach guys, I've been using their books for probably 20 years off and on, and they have a lot of good books. So I just put in my name. I'm already on their list, but I don't care. I'll be on their list again. And I'm going to use my email address from the University of Illinois because that's where I'm going to be using this tutorial first. Okay. And let's see. I usually say yes, send me new book announcements and stuff. That's not fine. And then I've got this I am not a robot thing that sometimes takes a lot of interaction to convince. Let's see. I'm going to click on it. And yeah, it wants me to show it images with cars. So let's see, that looks like a car. That's a truck. They probably consider that a car. That's a car. These are cars. And let's click on verify. And they're giving me new images to look for cars. That's the only one that I see. Verify that again. It didn't like that. Oh, here's another one here. Here's another one here. Here's another one there. Okay, let's hope that's going to satisfy it. It's really picky today, and I don't know why. So here, there. Those are the only cars that I see. Let's see if it's going to let me go. Finally, it finally decides I'm not a robot. I click on register. It registers me. It gives me another button that says something to do with download. Now it says continue to download. So that's they've improved that. So this is going to take us back to, unfortunately, the original page that we started on. So we click on continue to download. And we're back at the original page. Okay? And we're not even on the free downloads tab. So we have to go to the free downloads tab. And we go all the way down to the bottom. Okay? You remember we want the zip file and not the Windows version. And I am pleased to say that it actually does say, it actually will download now. Okay, so click on it, and there's the download actually happening. Now, if that wasn't a pain, what is, right? Okay, so let's close the browser. We have our file. Okay. And let's look. Now, when you're using a new version of the operating system, the default setting is that when you download a zip file into downloads, it automatically unzips it. So this is arriving unzipped in my downloads. If you've already turned that off, you may just have a zip file. If you do, you just have to double click on it to get to the state where I am. Okay, so I've got a folder and I have to put it somewhere good. Okay, I tell you where I like to put it. In this machine, which is all blank, I'm just going to put it into documents. Okay, I don't have anything in documents right now. I'm used to finding things in documents. You can put it wherever you want. You just have to remember where it goes. Okay, so then I'm going to go back and I'm going to find that folder and I'm going to drag it up here. Okay, and the top level directory is called MySQL. And let's look at what's in it. Okay. Well, it's got scripts from the book. Well, what are these? Well, each chapter has examples, okay, that are SQL scripts. And if you open up a file for, say, chapter 3, these are all the scripts that are in the chapter. So if you want to see one and actually run it, you have the code here to do it. Okay? That sounds nice. The thing that we're going to be looking for soon is DB setup. Okay, how do you set up a database in this environment? Well, you export both the definition and the data for your database. And how does it get exported? Well, it gets exported as an SQL script. Okay, and then you run it again and it reloads the database. Okay, so we're going to be running create databases.sql, which is going to create the databases that come with the book. Okay, we'll be doing that in just a minute. We also, in addition to having the scripts from the chapters, from the the text of the chapter. The end of each of the chapters are a bunch of exercises. So there's a set of exercises for each chapter, and the book comes with the solutions to those. So if you want to see the solutions to the exercises at the end of chapter 3, if you open up that, you have the solutions. Now, we're not going to do the version that comes at the end of the chapter. We have another parallel set that come from the author as well, and I'm going to have you download them in a couple of weeks and install a database for them. This parallel set that we're going to use for our homework stuff is called it's the My Guitar Shop database, and it's pretty fun. And it corresponds pretty much one-to-one. They're pretty much a similar exercise in the one that we're going to do for homework to the ones that are in the back of the chapter. And I tell students, if they want to do the back of the chapter exercises for practice, they can, or if they get stuck on the ones that we're doing, well, go find a similar one in the back of the chapter and then go look at the solution to it. Okay? All right. And there are some other things here, but nothing we're going to work with right now. So, okay. We're ready to begin to work with the files from the textbook. So how we're going to do that? Well, we're going to start up MySQL Workbench, which people tend to call Workbench. So I'm going to click on that down in the dock and open it up. Okay. And we're at the right spot to open up the connection to local instance 3306. That's the one that we're going to be using. So I'm going to click on that. And I'm going to have to put my password in because I haven't clicked this save password and keychain box. So I'll put in my Sesame password, my insecure password by design. Okay, and now we're just going to spend a minute or two and look at the databases that we have here. Okay. How do you know the databases that you have? Well, databases are called schemas, and over here in this navigation panel, you see that there is a list of schemas. There's one called sys. It's currently here, and we can click on it and open it. And let's see, what are the tables in sys? Sysconfig is the table that's in sys. So this is some internal information for MySQL. Okay, and we don't have any of the three databases that come with the textbook. They are called AP for accounts payable, OM for order management, and EX for example. And as you can see, they're not here. They're not here because we haven't loaded them yet. Well, how do we load them? Well, as I showed you before, there's a script to load the databases. And we open the script in the editor panel, and then we run it right here. So how do you open a script? Well, you go to the upper of the two toolbars. There's this upper toolbar and there's this lower toolbar. So you go to the upper toolbar, and one in from the left is an icon that says SQL with an open folder. That'll open a SQL script file. So that's what we want to do. Click on that. And I don't really like this version of the Finder tool, so I'm going to just get a list of files. That's what I like. And okay, here's the MySQL files. That's good. And we want to go to the DB setup, open up that, and create databases.sql. Okay. Now either you can double click on that, or I like to highlight it and then click open. And there it is. So it's a pretty big file and has a lot of stuff we're going to learn about in the class. Okay, it has all the SQL statements that create a new database schema. There's actually, this is a combination of the data for the three databases. So it creates the schema for A, P, E, X, and OM, and it has a bunch of inserts that insert the data into the sample databases. So how can you run a script? Well, it turns out on the lower toolbar there are two icons for running a script. They're lightning bolts, and the one on the left is the one that I like. The one on the right has like an I-beam in it, and it's really oriented towards running the part of the script where your cursor is. And I find it annoying. The one on the left, if in fact your cursor is just in a normal spot, it will run the whole script. Okay? So when we want to run this whole script, we'll put our cursor in a normal spot, like right up in the initial position, and we'll click on the lightning bolt and we'll run the whole thing. Okay? If we want to just run a single statement or group of them from the script, then we highlight them and then we hit the lightning bolt on the left, and it just will execute the ones that you highlighted. So a typical thing that I do is I don't do highlighting. I just put the cursor in a normal spot and I use the plain lightning bolt that's on the left. Now before I click this, I want to call your attention to this output panel. So when we run the script, here's the output that comes back from the server. So I'm going to go up and I'm going to click on the left lightning bolt, and you're going to see all this output that comes down from the server. And generally speaking, when you run some kind of a script, you want the output to be either these green checks or these yellow warning signs. Okay, we have some kind of contingent instruction here. If it dropped the database if it already exists, well, it couldn't do that because the database wasn't already there. So some of them we expect to come out with a warning sign. We don't want things to come out with a red icon, which says that things have not worked. Okay, so what's the evidence that we have actually created the databases? Well, let's go over to that navigation panel on the left and go to schemas and see we don't see them. Why? Because you need to refresh it. So if we go up to where it says schemas and come across to the right, there's a refresh symbol, and if we click that, we can see, oh, we added three more databases. Okay, good. How do we tell this tool we want to work with a particular database? Well, we're not going to rely on this feature too much, but the way that you do it is you go to the icon for the database and you double click on it. So right now we're working with AP. Most of the examples in the book are from the AP database. It's the accounts payable database. So I'm going to click on this and expand it, and here are the tables of the accounts payable database. And we're going to learn more about how to do this, but one of the things that you can do is you can hover over the name of the table here. And when you do, there are three icons that pop up to the right. If you take the little eye icon, it gives you some information about the table. If you take the wrench, it gives you a dialog for the settings of the table. And if you take this grid, it'll give you the data grid for the table. That's what we want to see. So we want to see what's in the invoices table. So we click on that, and it does a query we're eventually going to learn in a couple of weeks that if we want to see everything in the invoices table, that the proper SQL query for that is select asterisk from invoices. And what we see down here is what we call a result set. Okay, so here are all the invoices in the invoices table. And I've been using this sample database for quite a while, and I can tell you there are 114 rows in that. There are 114 invoices. And if we pull this slider down, we'll see, oh yeah, Kevin was right. There are 114 of them. So from this, you can see that we've done everything that we set out to do today. We downloaded the MySQL Tools and we installed them. We got a little experience using them, just a hair. We downloaded the files from the textbook and we installed them. We ran the script to create the databases, and then we actually looked at one of the table, the main table for the AP database is the invoices table, and we can see that it's properly populated. So that's it for today. There's plenty more to come, and notably, the next thing that you'll be ready to do is to read chapter 2 from the book and get used to the interface for Workbench. I just want to point out that chapter 2 was written in 2015, and so Workbench looks a little different now than it looked then. But the features are pretty much the same, and you should be able to find your way around. So having said that, I'm going to say bye until next time. Bye-bye.